Canary by Cloud9 and 3/4. Chapter 29. A Spontaneous Duet. Midoriya was trembling. He was holding the little piece of paper containing the number of his partner in his hand so tightly that it was about to rip. But that was mainly out of stress. He'd been paired up with Jiro, which he was rather happy about. What he wasn't so keen on was this test of courage idea. Midoriya flinched at the slamming of a door, or at the very presence of some people. He was going to scare himself silly and pass out in the middle of the forest. Jiro didn't look much happier. "Can we just fly to the midway point and back?" she inquired as the group ahead of them eagerly trudged into the forest where Class B was waiting in the shadows. "Not cheating!" Pixie Bob yelled at them as she overheard their conversation. "Worth a shot," Jiro groaned. At least Midoriya had his attack bird Siren to protect him. Shinso had gone into the forest first, smiling brilliantly as he braved the test of courage beside his raven friend, Tokoyami, who he hadn't spoken to until 2 minutes ago, but they already seemed to get along. Todoroki had been stuck with Kachan. They went into the woods next. Of course, no one but Shinso, and possibly Uraraka, knew about the adverse relationship between Midoriya and Kachan, but everyone felt sorry for Todoroki anyway. He didn't seem so bothered, though, when he wandered into the forest, his hands in his jacket pocket. Midoriya had been wearing his own jacket, but the summer evening was surprisingly warm. Actually, that might have just been because he was shaking in fear. Either way, he'd been sure to take his phone out of his pocket and shove it into that of his shorts. But then Pixie Bob said he wasn't even allowed to use it as a torch. Him and Jiro were doomed. "I hate scary things," she voiced. "Why can't we opt out of this?" "I don't like them either," Midoriya moaned. "Okay, Team 4, you're next," Mandalay called out once Yaoyorozu and Aoyama had been gone for long enough. Jiro grabbed onto Midoriya's shoulders and groaned sorrowfully as the two of them nervously ambled forwards. "Good luck, you guys!" Uraraka yelled after them just after they stepped across the threshold of the woods. "I'm sure you'll be fine!" "Don't say that!" Jiro snapped, letting go at Midoriya to turn around and glare at her for jinxing it. "Come on, you two! You're holding us up!" Pixie Bob encouraged, waving a fake cat paw at them. Nervously, Jiro gripped Midoriya's arm as they scurried into the forest, the trees soon blocking out the light of the lodge. "Oh, okay, here's the plan," Midoriya whispered. "We get through here as quickly and as quietly as possible." "What was that?" Jiro suddenly jumped, her nails digging into Midoriya's arm. Midoriya winced. "I didn't hear anything." "Ah! There it is again!" She started wailing and jumping up and down. "I don't like this. No, no, no! I think maybe you're just hearing animals in the forest," Midoriya suggested, glancing around nervously. Jiro was holding up her ox plugs like a radar, flicking them around at the slightest sound. Wind in the leaves, rodents in the undergrowth, birds in the trees. Whatever that was, rustling in the bushes. Jiro had noticed it before Midoriya and pointing at it with a shaking hand, tugging on Midoriya's arm and backing away. Then all of a sudden, a great beast leapt from the shadows. Ah! The two of them screamed, clutching onto each other in the panic, until they realized the beast was wearing glasses. Siren let out that chirpy little laugh of hers, joining in with the group of 1B students hiding in the bushes. "You two were the best so far!" Komori exclaimed, bouncing into view. "That's not fair!" Jiro whined. Midoriya just nodded frantically in agreement. The beast turned back into his normal self. Shishida from Class 1B. Shishida from Class B. "Fun! Fun!" Pony Tsunotori exclaimed, mimicking Komori's excitable actions. "Now you go! Next team!" Yes, let's go!" Jiro approved, pushing Midoriya. Shishida from Class B. "Fun! Fun!" Pony Tsunotori exclaimed, mimicking Komori's excitable actions. "Now you go! Next team!" Yes, let's go!" Jiro approved, pushing Midoriya down the path. Bye, Canary. Komori grinned, hurrying back into her hiding spot with Pony. Bye! Midoriya waved back at them, far less frightened now that he knew it was just the first of Class B's tricks. It didn't mean he was looking forward to the rest of them, though. The woods were eerily silent. At least to Midoriya they were. Jiro kept tripping over her own feet, arms held tight against her chest in panic as she constantly glanced around, squealing at the slightest indication that someone or something might be hiding just beyond the dirt track they followed. Siren started filling that silence with her gentle singing, which made Midoriya feel a little less nervous. What do you think the other members of Class B will do? Midoriya whispered to Jiro. The sound of his voice made her jump. I don't know, she sighed. You probably know their quirks better than me. Have you not done any joint training with them or something? No, not yet at least. Jiro was still glancing around fearfully, but the conversation seemed to be calming her down by a slight margin. What do you think? Well, Shirosaki could use her vines to make it look like the forest is coming alive. Kamakiri could probably do a similar thing to Shishida, jump out of the bushes with his blink quirk. Koruro can melt in the darkness, so it's pretty obvious what he'll be doing. Oh, Yanagi's quirk is called Poltergeist, so she would be really good at this. Maybe she'll... Ah, no! Jiro cried. Stop! It's just making me more nervous. And your muttering's just merging with Siren's singing, and I can barely hear... Ah! What was that? I think that was an owl. Midoriya chuckled. Oh, shut up. It's not funny, she moaned. I would be fine if I didn't know there were 20 people hiding somewhere around here, just waiting for us to come their way. They'd stopped now as Midoriya tried to calm Jiro down a little. Siren had stopped singing, too, leaving the overbearing silence behind. Jiro grumbled. We must be near the next group. Who out of Class B can make all this fog? Midoriya frowned. Fog? He glanced around at the surrounding woodland. Jiro was right. A slither of gray mist snaked through the trees towards them, moving slowly. Unnaturally. Well, Komori could use her spores, but we've already seen her. Perhaps Fukidashi? He can turn onomatopsis into reality, but I don't know any of those which can make all this fog. Midoriya started backing away unsurely. This didn't seem right. And then, Siren! Midoriya cried as the little bird toppled off his shoulder. He caught her fallen form in his hands, her wing outstretched and beak hanging slightly open. What's wrong with her? Jiro asked in concern, pulling Midoriya away from the approaching mist. Her little chest was still rising and falling. It seemed like she was asleep, but how? It seemed like she was asleep, but how? The fog! Midoriya realized, staring at the substance that continued to creep towards them. It's poisonous! What? Jiro exclaimed. But I thought you said only Komori could do something like that. And this isn't spores, it's... You smell that? Something's burning! That was when they heard it, Manderley's voice in their heads. 2 villains attacked us. It's possible there are more coming. Villains? Jiro repeated, shocked as the 2 of them continued to back away from the relentless gas. Everyone return to camp immediately. We're regrouping. Do not engage any enemies. How did they find us? Jiro gaped. There was no reply Midoriya could possibly give, so he grabbed her wrist and pulled her down the path, running as fast as they could away from the poison, holding Siren's limp form against his chest as he did so. It's no use, Jiro exclaimed. It's catching up with us. She was right. The air was becoming thicker as she spoke. With no hands free, Midoriya couldn't cover his mouth like Jiro could as he began to cough, so he diverted his path and went straight for the nearest tree. By gingerly dropping Siren into one of the pockets in his shorts, he grabbed the lowest branch and hauled himself up, indicating to Jiro to follow him. She did, tucking her chin into her elbow as she climbed up, as high into the tree as they could. It was fortunately rather sturdy, and so supported both their weights, as their heads peered out over the canopy, taking big gulps of the fresher night air. The gas is denser than the rest of the air, Midoriya panted, relieved to be able to breathe freely again. It sinks As long as we stay up high, we'll be safe from it. Right, Jiro replied, gazing out over the forest. Her eyes widened at the sight of the smoke they'd smelt earlier, fueled by great blue flames not that far away. What now? Midoriya glanced around. He couldn't see where camp was. The smoke and fire blocked his view. After a moment's thought, he reached down for his other pocket, where his phone lay next to the bag of throat lozenges he'd been carrying around all day for him and Koda, as well as Fukidashi, who according to Komori also got a sore throat after using his quirk too much. He tapped on his messaging app, but there was no signal. Nothing he could use to communicate with the others like he had in Hosu. Jiro was watching him as his mind whirred. Her eyes lit up after Midoriya's did the same. Shoving his phone away once more, he pulled out that bag of lozenges, pouring out its contents around his phone, and then, once cautiously handing Siren over to Jiro, did the same for the equally sized bag in his other pocket, containing Siren's birdseed, which was now littered all over the tree's branches and leaves. "What are you—" Jiro started, but was interrupted by the loud ripping sound that the bags made when Midoriya pulled them apart by their seams. Carefully readjusting the strings that once held the bags closed, he held the fabric up to his face, covering his mouth. "That's smart," Jiro nodded, handing Siren back over as she accepted the other bag and putting on the makeshift mask. "Here, I'll take Siren. She'll be safer in my pocket than yours," she realized, taking the tiny bird back and delicately lowering her into the pocket of her purple owl jumper. If Midoriya had kept her in the pockets of his shorts, he could have easily hurt her on accident. "We could go back down to the path now we've got some kind of mask each," Jiro suggested. "Then just follow it back to camp, where the pros are." But Midoriya wasn't listening. He was preoccupied by the mountain that rose from the trees nearby, Kota's secret hideout. "Owl! That little boy, Kota! He's probably up there!" "Mandalay's cousin's kid?" Jiro frowned, then her eyes widened once more. "What if a villain runs into him?" "We have to go and get him! I'm the only one who knows he goes up there!" Midoriya exclaimed, already preparing to summon his wings and fly off. "Wait!" Jiro exclaimed, realizing what he was about to do. "You can't use wings. You won't be able to lift me off the ground, and then you won't be able to use them again to fly back with Kota!" Midoriya hesitated. She was right, so instead, he began to climb back down the tree, still cautious not to breathe in too much air. Then let's hurry on foot," he told her, his voice free of its usual nervous flair, as the determination to do what was right cleared the fog in his mind. Even whilst he and Jiro charged through that of reality, Midoriya could see crystal clear what he needed to do. He needed to be Kota's hero. As they climbed up the mountainside, Jiro became less fearful of breathing the air around her. She took off the mask and shoved it in the pockets of her shorts. She was worried about the strings tangling themselves up around Siren if she put it in her jumper. Canary soon did the same. His masks were a stroke of genius, but they could only do so much. She felt slightly light-headed, but didn't mention it. At the moment, all that mattered was getting to Kota. They did so just in time. "Nice hat, kid. I like it. Why don't you trade me for this lame mask, huh?" Jiro told him in a hushed voice as they stumbled up the rocky path, picking up the pace. "Said they couldn't get a shipment of the good ones in time. Oh, well." You stop right there!" Canary yelled as they reached the top. Kota was running. The little boy skidded to a halt by them. A great hooded figure loomed over, his white mask tossed carelessly to the ground by his feet. "Oh, what do we have here?" the man leered. "Why, if it isn't Canary, just my luck." "Back off!" Jiro snarled. She held her ox cords close to her legs on reflex, but she wasn't wearing her hero costume. There was no way to amplify her heartbeat. It was beating fast enough as it was. But she was of little use in this situation. "Or what?" he said in a mocking voice. "You gonna take my eye out with those silly little plugs of yours?" He reached up, pulling down his hood to reveal his mutilated face and a missing eye. Kota tensed up beside him. "Mama, Papa," he murmured, gazing up at the villain. Jiro saw Midoriya grit his teeth. She didn't know the story behind this, but it couldn't have been good.
Or is that what Canary's gonna do? Hey, where's your little birdie? I heard you carried her around with you. I want to see the look on your face when I crush her skull.
Jiro took a step back. This guy was crazy.
I'm not supposed to kill you myself,
he continued like this was a casual conversation between old friends.
But no one said anything about the other two. Come on, let's have some fun.
Watch out! Jiro cried, hearing the ground crack between the villain's feet as he leapt forwards. She pushed Canary and Kota out of the way just in time for the villain to miss, barely scraping her cheek.
Come on, stand still for a moment, would ya?
Muscle fibers broke free of his skin, wrapping themselves around his already bulging arms, strengthening them further as he lunged once more. They all managed to dodge, Jiro grasping Kota's arm and pulling him to the left, whilst Canary somersaulted to the right. The villain hit the rock of the mountainside dead on, forming a massive crater in the wall, showing off the power he held.
Show me your blood,
he cried, aiming another punch at Jiro and Kota. No! Canary screamed. He leapt up behind him, bouncing off the wall and slamming his big red shoes into the villain's face. It took him off guard, startling him as he stumbled backwards toward the edge of the cliff. As a slight trickle of red poured from his nose, the villain smiled down at Canary.
You almost knocked out my eye there. Good. This'll be more entertaining than I thought.
Canary was fast. Evading was one of his strong points. Jiro had seen that in the sports festival. He'd held his own against Ida, the fastest of them all. But this muscle villain guy was fast too. As Canary jumped, twisted, and turned in a desperation to avoid him, it became clear to Jiro that if they didn't think of a plan, and fast, they were going to be in deep trouble. She felt Kota's hands dig into the soft fabric of her jumper. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay, she whispered to him, holding him close and backing away.
Is that right?
The villain diverted his attention away from Canary, charging at Jiro once more. She pushed Kota away again, but she wasn't as quick as Canary. Taking the villain's advice, she aimed an ox cord at his remaining eye. He grabbed it, pulled it down, yanking her head along with it as his other arm swung around. Jiro curled one arm around her pocket, protecting the unconscious bird concealed within, whilst instinctively holding up the other one to shield her face. There was a sickening crunch as the villain's fist made contact with it, tossing her across the mountainside to the rocky floor beside the crater in the wall.
Jiro!
Canary yelled. Jiro didn't register the pain in her now crooked arm. For some reason, her mind focused more on the fact that she'd rather that than acknowledge how painful that must have been.
Yes, that's what I want. Blood,
the villain cried.
Before you die, though, maybe you can help me out. I still have a job to do after all. I'm looking for another kid named Bakugo. Seen him around?
Jiro fell onto her knees, not even registering his odd question.
I'll take your silence as a no. Oh well, say goodbye, girlie.
Jiro opened her eyes in time to see the sadistic man run at her once more, only for Canary to leap in his path between him and Jiro, jumping up again and kicking at the villain's jaw. He was so quick that the villain didn't even have time to divert his punch and instead hit the floor beside Jiro again. She scrambled to her feet, wincing at the throbbing in her arm, letting the adrenaline that coursed through her veins block out as much as it could.
The villain laughed again. You're both so pathetic. To think you took down the hero killer. Come on, sing. I want to hear that famed little voice of yours.
Right, sing. Canary needed to use his quirk. But what to try? As the routine of dodging and distracting continued, Jiro now joining in the best she could. Her mind raced. Canary needed to be careful. From what Jiro knew about the stain attack in Hosu, Canary had used titanium to avoid hurting himself further. However, a particularly strong punch to the jaw not only had stopped him from singing, but it also cracked through the metal the song provided. It left behind a cracked scar that had still to fade from Canary's cheek. If he dared use that song against such a powerful opponent, he could be left far worse than a stain. Would a strength enhancer be strong enough to overcome this guy? Could he build up a song fast enough to be effective at all? Perhaps sleeping would... She had been distracted. Her ox cord got stuck in one of the man's building muscle fibers. It tightened around it, and the villain pulled her in close. Trapping her within the fibers, the villain now had his hands around her head. Canary stood back in horror, hesitating, unsure of what to do as Jiro squirmed to get free.
Come on, Canary,
he exclaimed, starting to press hard on either side of Jiro's head. She yelled out in pain.
I'll crush her skull if you don't.
But Canary was frozen in fear. Could he even sing if he tried?
The villain tutted in disappointment. It won't take long. In the end, despite all these quirks and superpowers, when it comes down to it, we're all only human. She'll be dead in seconds.
That's it. If Canary couldn't do it, she would. The villain wasn't pushing hard or letting her dangle there, waiting just a little longer to see what Canary would do. Jiro only realized she was crying when she started to sing. But I'm only human.
Oh, what's this?
The villain grinned, gazing down at her. And I bleed when I fall down.
Oh, how cute. She's singing for you, little birdie. It's your last song. I don't know what you're saying, but I hope it's a good one.
Perfect. He doesn't speak enough English to know what she was building up. Your words in my head, knives in my heart, Jiro sobbed. You build me up and then I fall apart, 'cause I'm only human. She trailed off. Canary still wasn't singing. This was it. It was over. I can turn it on. Jiro looked up again, seeing Canary framed against the burning forest below them as he picked up where she left off.
Yes, that's it,
the villain cried. He dropped Jiro. She fell painfully on her broken arm. Before she could get to her feet again, his foot was on her side, pinning her down. I can hold the weight of worlds.
Now you stay right there, he grinned. I'll deal with your friend first. Then you. Then the little water hose boy. How about that, huh?
Be your everything. His muscle mass increased exponentially as he charged forward. Canary dropped into a fighting stance. I can do it. His fists raised as Jiro desperately tried to rise once more. I can do it. Pulling herself up by a good arm. Once up, Jiro joined in. I'll get through it. She didn't know what power this song could possibly give, but it was what came to her at the time. There was no turning back now. But I'm only human, Canary cried, staring up at the villain defiantly. The man stumbled back. Wait, what is... I'm only human, Jiro continued alongside Canary. And I crash and I break down. The villain was shrinking. Her heart was in her mouth as she stumbled to Canary's side, still singing along to the music in her mind. And then I fall apart, 'cause I'm only human. There was a cry of pain from the villain as he fell to the ground, most likely regretting letting Canary sing. His muscle fibers were retreating back into his skin, or whatever remained of it. His quirk. It was disappearing. But that didn't make sense. Why was that the power this song gave? As Jiro saw the world, quirks were what made them human, what made them different, so why... She stared at Canary, stopping her singing. Because Canary had never had a quirk. I'm only human. This was what he viewed as normal, as truly human.
I'm only human.
A weak, quirkless boy, battered and bruised, kneeling before those with a greater power.
Just a little human.
He charged at the villain, scooping up a large shard of the mountain from the ground. With a swing, the prosthetic eye went flying, and the villain lay motionless at his feet.
I can take so